months to comply. Within a year, Lee Campbell and 8 others would die in an avoidable accident. So why weren't the airlines forced to fix the problem sooner?
If these airplanes, these large commercial airplanes, are grounded, it's an economic disaster. So what they do is they lobby in the regulatory agency in the United States, it's the FAA, to allow them to do the fixes over time when the airplanes are in for normal maintenance. And that way, they're not taken out of service. But when they do that, when they allow the airlines, the air carriers, and the manufacturers to fix these over time, in essence what the FAA is doing is they're gambling with the lives of the passengers and the crew that are flying the airplanes during the time they're not fixed.
After the deaths on Flight 811, the FAA instantly shortened the deadline for fixing the cargo door from 18 months to just 30 days. The pressure of the Campbell's campaign eventually began to pay off. The vital piece of evidence that could prove them right, the cargo door, still lay 2 miles down in the Pacific Ocean. But as articles appeared in the American press, the NTSB commissioned the U.S. Navy to search for it. 100 miles south of Honolulu, a deep submersible began to trawl the seabed.
We went to Honolulu and waited there while they had their attempts, and they finally recovered the door from 14,000 feet of water, which was the deepest recovery ever at that time. And we were phoned within an hour of it coming out of the water.
But before the Campbells could see it, the door was swiftly removed to Boeing's plant in Seattle. The Campbells went in hot pursuit.
We went over to Boeing and they wouldn't show it to us. So they reckoned that the crucial pieces had gone to the NTSB. So again, we got in the car and drove across to Washington, D.C. We arrived at Ron Schleid's office, and Ron looks at his watch and he says, "I can give you 5 minutes." So about 3 hours later, we had the pieces that they recovered in our hand, and they acknowledged that we're definitely correct. It was an electrical malfunction.
Finally, the NTSB publicly issued a revised report that concurred with the Campbells' version.
There was an inadvertent failure of either the switch or the wiring that caused an uncommanded opening of the door.
It's nice that other people know that you're right and had been all along, and that the support that they had given you was vindicated.
The Campbells spent thousands of dollars of their own money on their campaign. They were never interested in a financial settlement for Lee's death, but they did persuade United and Boeing to set up a university scholarship in his name.
I couldn't have lived with myself if we had done no investigating ourselves. It was just something we both felt we needed to do. We didn't even discuss it. We just knew that's what we would do.
Yeah.
But despite long and public campaigns like that of the Campbells, critics fear that the airline industry has not learned the lessons from Flight 811.
The regulatory agencies, they have a dual charge. One is to encourage aviation, and another is aviation safety. And when they get in a position where you have economics up against air safety, they tend to err on the side of economics rather than safety.
Serious accidents caused by known defects have continued to occur. In the 1990s, known problems in aircraft de-icing systems led to crashes. At least 3 planes have had fatal fires due to known dangers from flammable insulation material. In 1998, a fully laden 747 blew itself up over the Atlantic when known faults in the old wiring ignited known hazards in the fuel tanks. Inevitably, experts are skeptical about the industry's record of balancing profit against prevention.
And what the industry says, to go in and replace this wiring would ground all these airplanes, would be astronomically expensive. One airplane every 10 years, one airplane every 5 years, 200, 300 people, cost of doing business. Cost of doing business. And that's a great economic analysis, and unless your mother or your child is on board one of these airplanes that happens to pay the price for their economic satisfaction.
For some of the survivors of Flight 811, the cost has been heavy.
Each crew member handled it differently. I know there are still 2 crew members that have never set foot on an aircraft again. It was very difficult for me. I was diagnosed with severe post-traumatic stress disorder. You can't reason, you can't think. Making the slightest decision is very difficult. You're just at a total loss. So it was very difficult to cope with.